Beacon Press Audio presents The Black Practice of Disbelief, an introduction of the principles, history, and communities of Black nonbelievers by Anthony B. Pinn. This audiobook is narrated by Darian Dauchan, published by Beacon Press Audio 2024.
Introduction. I've grown to like non-theist as a broad spectrum term that carries less baggage than more commonly used words such as atheist or agnostic. Candace Gorham. To do good is my religion. Thomas Paine. According to popular imagination in the United States, to be a Black American is to be a Black Christian. This connection is made typically without any call for justification. It is grounded in a common narration of Black life that views its guiding concerns and questions as revolving around issues of transformation and revelation, best discussed using the theological grammar and vocabulary of the dominant religious orientation of the United States, Christianity. Of course, there is something to this association, in that the vast majority of Black Americans claim some affiliation with Christianity, particularly one of the predominantly Black denominations. Yet this link has never captured the thinking, motivations, and orientation of all Black Americans. In fact, in recent years, a population of Black Americans who claim no connection to Christianity in general, or the Black church in particular, has grown. The challenge of categories. As will become clear over the course of this book, there are a variety of names by which Black non-theists call themselves. For instance, atheist, skeptic, freethinker, or humanist. And while I wouldn't make the argument that they are synonymous, I would say that they point to overlapping concerns and claims that make the terminology used to describe this population somewhat flexible. One gets a sense of this in the following statement made by journalist Alejandro Molina. Black nonbelievers have for years been working to redefine what it means to be atheist, a word too often linked to white spaces, mostly concerned with creationism and the separation of church and state. Many Black nonbelievers identify as humanist and challenge Christianity for being linked to racism, capitalism, and sexism. Shared social concerns provide something of a nexus that serves to soften the distinctions of titles. There are layers to this identity, complexities that too often are ignored. I believe this is what author and activist Akibu Hutchinson is getting at when she writes that Black non-theists are typically truncated and reduced to one dimension of their identity that involves disbelief in God. And so, rejecting religion becomes an end in and of itself, and not merely symbolic of a more politicized belief system based on social justice, ethics, Black liberation, Black feminism, and serving Black communities within the context of heightened anti-Black state violence, segregation, and misogynoir. Again, this isn't to render these categories, e.g. humanist, atheist, skeptic, identical. It is to point out a fluid application that doesn't demand hard and fixed distinction, but instead sees each label addressing a particular dimension of a complex sense of self. I'll use a personal example. I understand myself to be a humanist, but there are conversations and times during which it is more productive to highlight a particular element of that identity. Therefore, I might call myself an atheist or a free thinker, depending on what is needed in a given context to best express what I understand as my commitments and aims. I would say I'm not alone in applying this strategy. In other words, there isn't necessarily a conflict in using a variety of description to capture one's non-theism. Keep in mind this claim when hearing Asher Jack's self-identification. I am an atheist. I'm also a skeptic. My atheism and skepticism are key parts in maintaining peace of mind, feeling in control of my life, and sometimes even healing. Or think of the blending of terms in this statement by Ken Granderson. For those not familiar with the word, a humanist is basically an atheist who takes strong moral stances on things, or for whom morality is a clear and present factor in the thoughts and actions in their daily lives.
In all of these instances, there is a concern with behavior and beliefs beyond theistic assumptions.
For the purposes of this slim volume, I want to overturn the assumption that only Black theism in its various forms offers life orientation. By doing this, I move to the center of Black religious life, a tradition that is typically misunderstood and marginalized. I present Black humanism in a new way, one that highlights its communal dimensions, its meaning-making rituals, and its belief structures. One gets a sense of this thinking with Sikipu Hutchinson, who explains her life and philosophical orientation, having been raised in a secular home, over against the theism encountered during a year attending a Catholic school. Although Catholic dogma and Catholic hierarchy inform this regime of power, authority, and control, I saw no significant difference between these practices and those of other Christian power structures that also enforce binaries of good/bad, self/other, male/female, gay/straight, and Christian/heathen, while giving so-called religious leaders a cover for immorality and bigotry. Very early on, I was a humanist and a feminist without necessarily having the language to break it down that way. Being humanist and feminist demands questioning received dogmas and slaying sacred cows whose very existence depends on your erasure. To subscribe to a human-centered notion of morality, ethics, and justice as a Black woman is an outlier position that carries social, political, and professional risks. What should be acknowledged, what this book calls attention to, is the unlikely resident Black humanism in the house of meaning-making. This is simply to say, again, that there is an impressive number of Black Americans who claim no particular theistic religious orientation, but, and here's the kicker, they aren't nihilistic, and they aren't hiding away in dark corners feeding on despair. No, they're making their way through the world with community, with a philosophy of life, and in light of certain ritual practices, all of which shape their existence in relationship to others and in the world. Placing Black humanism. When it comes to identifying Black humanism, it has often been done by negation. We know what it isn't. This, for instance, would be a case in which the Black humanists might highlight their atheism or their attention to science and critical thought, in which case they might emphasize their free thought or skepticism. Without doubt, its range of interests and social critiques would mean it isn't synonymous with the humanism coming out of the Enlightenment, in part because it challenges some key Enlightenment assumptions concerning the nature and meaning of the human, the workings of race, and so on. It isn't theistic in orientation, and although some individuals remain within the community of Black theists, it isn't a dimension of the Black church tradition. To the contrary, there are signs that Black humanism exists in opposition to the Black church. Yet, there are similarities with Black churches, overlapping concerns, so to speak. For example, despite the rhetoric of some of its more atheistic advocates, Black humanism concerns itself with meaning-making. In noting this, I'm not suggesting that it is concerned with transhistorical relationships. Rather, this is to say that Black humanism, like various forms of Black theism, e.g., Black churches, Black Islamic orientations, certain modes of Black Buddhism, Voodoo, Lukumi, seeks to answer the fundamental questions of human existence, such as, who are we? What are we? Why are we? When are we? These speak to concerns and probing having to do with the desire to make life meaningful, to make meaning of one's existence.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?